Hey, nonprofit leader, Miss Kathy here. So you're in for a treat. I am going to be presenting, it's actually a recording, but I'm going to be presenting the 8 common mistakes when it comes to grant writing. So I actually have a grant writing course inside of a community, and both are free. So you're going to get to experience the portion of the grant writing course that I have, and I'm going to allow you to take a little peek in. So that's why we're showing you the recording. And then as a little bonus, we kind of have an overview of the do's and don'ts of this. But again, this is about grant writing, writing your grant. If you're a new nonprofit, a small nonprofit, that's really my target. These people who have, or organizations that have never gotten any grants. So you might be a medium size even, because some people have never decided, or organizations never decided to go after grants. But again, grant writing course is free, and this section is part of it. We have a whole community, and it's free as well. So let's jump on into it. I'll see you at the end. Hey, as I said, we're going to just jump on in. The 8 common grant writing mistakes. These are very, very important. Mistake number 1. Assuming the funder knows what your organization does and the impact you have on the community or your organization has. Make eye contact with your audience to create a sense of intimacy and involvement. In other words, let me move my little circle of self out of here. We want to weave relatable stories into your presentation using narratives that make your message memorable and impactful, encourage questions and provide thoughtful responses to enhance audience participation. Use live polls or surveys to gather audience options, promoting engagement and making sure the audience feel involved. So technically, the latter part of the statement, as far as making eye contact, and some of these others were more geared toward if you have to do in-person presentations or pitch contests, right? So you definitely, overall, you want to make sure that they know what your organization is about, who you are, and the impact, even more important, that you are having on the community itself. And a lot of times that will require some relatable stories that are in your presentation, using narratives to make your message. And that's what we mean by memorable and impactful. So that's the connection that you want to have. And even if you're just writing the grant, or you're writing on paper, we'll say, or whatever, you're writing for the written word, okay? I got it out. When you're doing that, you definitely want to make sure you're giving just enough that they know who your organization is or what it's about. All right, let's go to mistake number 2. And that is discussing your organizational needs and not the needs of your target population in the needs section. Is your organization relevant? So this is the extension of the first mistake, right? The needs section of an application should clearly define the needs of your target population. It is necessary to discuss both the need itself and the reason behind the need. The need should be documented with credible sources, relevant to the project being funded, and local in nature. So I want to say first, a lot of people will come to me and ask me, how do you write a grant? How do I write a grant? Well, that need statement is part of writing a grant proposal. So that's very, very important, that in the section that they're asking, that you're not just talking about what your organization needs. I need the money so I can get computers. No, the need is based on your population. So what is the purpose of the computers? Who's using the computers, and how is that going to transform their lives or help their lives? So it's about your target population. You don't want to say one part without giving that last part. It's about the impact. And are you relevant today? I definitely go into details in our grant writing training on, how you make that relevant today, and not, what we did 10 years ago, or even this point now, a year ago. So mistake number 2 continued is, it is also important to discuss the reasons behind the need. It's kind of continuation, or why the target population is experiencing their current condition or status. Quite simply, your organization cannot be part of the problem. You exist to serve a need, Oh, I could say so much on that. So mistake number 3, writing goals and objectives that only measure what you do instead of the changes in the target population. Again, we don't want to make this about your organization per se, but if it's about the organization and how are we best serving our target population. There has been a shift in the way funders and public think about outcomes, and that's really been ongoing for the last 10 years, but even more so, people are tired. They're tired of just giving their money away if they're funding it, whether it be the public, our government, whether it be private funders or just individuals. So it's all about outcomes, right? So these outputs, which could be your laptops or your computers that you're trying to get, focus on the activities conducted by your organization and are intended, the goal is to lead to the client change, right? But inherently they do not measure client change. So outcomes, on the other hand, measure the changes in clients. That is the impact. And so writing goals and objectives that usually only measure what you do instead of the changes in the target population. Okay, so funders usually ask you to break down the goals and outcomes down into smaller parts that provide specific measurable actions, objectives, and indicators. So you got your vision, right? You got your mission that's kind of ongoing, and then breaking down the goals are the objectives. You want some solid ones, and how that's going to be accomplished with each goal that you have set. Objectives need to be, once again, SMART, which means, just like we said, the smaller parts that provide specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time frame, right? Very, very important when you're developing these. So mistake number 4, not spending your money in the approach section. What do we mean? I'll go over this and then I'll kind of explain, because every time I explain, I seem to be getting to the different bullet points, because these are very clear to me, but we want to make sure they're clear to you as well. So everything requested in the budget should clearly be explained through the activities in the approach. There should be nothing new to the reviewer when he or she gets to the budget. It should be transparent from the approach. The approach section discusses the who, what, where, when, and why of the project. It answers the questions to meet the goals and objectives, what will be done. Bring it up to speed. We also call it the methodology of a grant proposal. Very, very important. Sometimes besides your need statement, the methodology. What are you using? How are you going to put these things together? And again, I go deeper into explaining your approach. That could be simple as, I'm getting ahead of myself, but there's something called the budget narrative. And that means, what are you going to do to actually implement this program? That's your intake. That's your things, not just the program itself, but there's, how are you going to measure the goals? Is there some people that need to be involved after to be able to know later on? Again, I could go on and on and on. Mistake number 5. Not outlining data collection sources and instruments. This is the facts, the facts, the facts. Have your sources. Sometime for my small nonprofits, you don't have enough data collection, but you could get some case studies out there and then bring it in using, because the numbers don't lie, right? Then you want to bring in certain tools. That might be technology, that might be surveys, that might be polls. And again, I get ahead of myself because this is the evaluation. Guess what? That's another part of the grant proposal. So evaluation is a critical piece of the project or program you are developing, because this is the section where you pay back the funder for their money. You will not pay back money with dollars, but you will pay back with data and demonstrated results. Go back to your objectives. Ask yourself, where are you going to get the information to measure each objective? Data instruments include questionnaires, surveys, checklists, interviews, focus groups, mechanical tests, observations, and documentation review. That's a lot. So many options. It's simple if you're a small nonprofit and then you want to grow into incorporating other tools. Mistake number 6, mistakes in calculating your budget request. Another extension. I mentioned the budget narrative. Everything requested in the budget should be clearly explained through the activities in the approach. They're all connected. You have your need statement or your need section, and then that leads to how are you going to solve that problem of the need, and then we want to be able to evaluate. So you take those 3 components. The budget is involved in all of that, right? So a budget narrative is also required. Its purpose is to show how each line item was formulated. One of the most common ways reviewers withhold points in scoring the proposal is to note disparities between the narrative description of the project and the budget. I could go on and on. We actually discussed that once again in our grant writing course. And then as a continuation, do not expect the reviewer to trust you. Instead, it's your duty, right, to make your project so clear and logical that the reviewer can't miss how the words and the numbers are related. While it sounds obvious, make sure your calculations add up. And I can give so many examples of how when that's not connected, you don't get the money. Like, we can't go out here and ask for $100,000, but technically you just gave a $10,000 budget. So the budget has to make sense, and you have to justify it. So mistake number 7, not following the funder's instructions. You know what? That should have been mistake number 1. No matter how many webinars or sometimes I will go to meetings where funders are there, and this is number 1. This is number 1 in HR. This is number 1 just in general. People following instructions. Usually funders give you explicit directions to follow when preparing and submitting your proposals. Directions often include information such as due dates, times, page limits, required attachments, how to order the components of your organization, margin sizes, and even the font to use in the narrative. If that font says 10, 12 is usually common, 11 and 12. Why are you putting a 13? Because you said you wanted 13 for the title. It's not about looking pretty if they're giving you these sizes that you need to do, including your margin sizes. Many funders assume that if you can't follow directions when you are asking for the money, you won't follow directions when it comes to submitting reports and following through with the implementation of your proposal. Remember, they might see thousands of grant proposals, but I guarantee 50%, as high as 70% are thrown away because they didn't follow the simple directions. So don't let that be you. Mistake number 8, not editing. Can I say that sometimes you don't need a grant writer? You just need an editor, and that could be an English teacher sometime. It depends. It could be students. You'd be surprised if people are having questions, then, because there's a grammatical, but there's a, just the overall context of what you're writing that needs to make sense. So you must leave time in the schedule for a second and third review, or fourth or fifth, of your proposal once everything is complete. These reviews maximize your proposal strength and eliminate weaknesses. Reviews will also help you make sure your simple mistakes in spelling and grammar are caught and to fit and flow together. So you can't just use Grammarly. That's what we often use, because the word here and the word here are spelled differently. They mean something differently. So you want to make sure you're giving it. And how do you start off? A lot of times with these proposals, I'm probably going too far over, or out there on a rant, but you can start with your board members. Send it to each one of them and let them review it as well. Simple as that. Oh, you're telling me you don't have board members? That's a whole nother conversation. And we're going to go over some quick do's and don'ts, just kind of overreaching of all of the 8 mistakes we just talked about. Do make contact with grant officers or officer if you have questions. It's not always a phone call because sometimes they say do not call. That might be an email, right? If it's a government grant, a lot of times whatever questions you have, they have to make it public, and you're not the only one that's asking those questions. So don't depend on other people and wait for them to ask the questions, because there's a grant period of time for you to submit questions, even for sometimes the corporate grants or the other type of grants. Just go ahead and ask the question, and they will send that email out. Sometimes that grant itself is not clear, and they have to go back out to the drawing board because it needs to be clear to everyone. Do develop a template proposal for repeat use. Again, whatever you've done for one, you should be expanding or editing from that. Don't keep creating new proposals for every single grant. That's why sometimes you all can do the simple. You can do the simple grants yourself and then pay the grant writers for the big ones, the ones that are more complex. Do read the entire proposal before beginning to write. And I know people that jump into it, well, I have to do this, this, and this. And then I go through the actual grants and what they're requiring. I'm like, this is not what they're asking for. Why are you writing all of that? Very important. And do tackle each section separately. There's a simple way to do that now that we have drives, Google Drive, that we can actually tackle each section collaboratively, meaning if you have a team and we all see that section, but work on them separately and make sure they're done. Here's the don'ts. Do not guess on anything you don't understand. That kind of goes back to the do. Ask questions. But this can be detrimental to your grant. Don't copy someone else's grant, even though it is simple. And that now we want to update. Don't use your AI word for word. Don't. You need to have a basis of answering the question. Then if you're going to use AI, and even then, copy that off by typing it, but add in some things that are unique to what you're doing, the way you speak, your voice, right? Very, very important. It's not about how intellectual your voice is necessarily. We want to get the basics like the grammar, but sometimes it's about what you have to say. No, it's always about what you have to say, because if you're the founder, it's about your experience. As well as, we talked about case studies, but I could go on and on. Do not submit grant proposal without letters of support unless you are not in partnership. And what I mean by just that first part, letters of support, even if you're new, there might be some people that know what you've done before, especially if it's related. For instance, if you're a teacher, if you're a mental health worker, if you've been in healthcare for years, if you even say domestic violence, but there's been some professionals that have supported you through your journey, you can start off with those to show that your credibility within the organization. If you've done some things in the community, get some of the leaders to write those letters. Now, some will tell you, especially with the digital age, it will allow for those letters of support. It will help. And it will say, do you want to submit anything else, any miscellaneous? Submit them in there, right? Get those. Do not make up lies of things you are not doing. You know, this is where you have to look at you. Because what I'm going to say here from my experience is I've dealt with people who were religious, faith-based, spiritual, doesn't matter. I've dealt with people on the high intellectual level, economic level, low economic level, low intellectual level. You as a person, just don't lie. Don't make things up. Because when they call you or email you, not the grant writer, because they want to hear from you, you have to actually know and have done some things. And best bet, it's easy to just go to Google, type up your name, type up your organization, and see what comes up. So you want to make sure that you're not making anything up. And do not do or add anything that they do not ask for. Very, very important. And if you're doing a pitch or a presentation, what happens is when you answer something that they didn't ask for, they basically zone out. let me just go get the person that knows and can answer things directly and not wasting my time. So those are your do's and don'ts. I hope you got something out of that. And for those of you that are not already in my program, I have a free nonprofit academy, right? At least this portion of it is free on the school platform, where the grant writing training is free. And what we're going to be doing, or what we're doing, is I will do short videos, sometime once a week, sometime once every 2 weeks. We'll do live training where the things that you have the most problems, we will address those. We'll go deeper into grant writing, because at the end of the day, how I make my money as a grant writing coach, as a nonprofit expert, is the strategies, the growth, the development, and coaching you through that process. The grant writing is only a small fraction of what you need to do as an organization to become sustainable. So how do you get to that? First of all, if you haven't got my grant writing bundle, or grant bundle, nonprofit bundle, you can go to iamgrantready.com, and that will actually lead you to the academy. And it's a grant checklist, and then you have another part of it. It's almost like it is an ebook, which if you have not started your nonprofit, or you maybe left out some things, or need to really make it more solid, check your foundational piece. It goes step by step how to start a nonprofit organization. Yes, I can file those services, but if you're coming for my paid part of what I do, I need your organization to have a solid foundation. Sometimes it's that simple when you're not getting grants. So just go to iamgrantready.com, right? That's the way you get to the school. We're going to do it that way. But I will leave the links for that, and I'll leave the links if you're coming directly to the school. But I want to make sure that you have access to that checklist and that bundle. Very, very important. Okay, 1, 2, 3. All right. I hope I see you all in the academy. Peace.